Hey there, Dani de Groot here from Martial Arts on Rails. In this video we'll talk about the many benefits of teaching private classes. We'll start with talking about why you should be teaching private classes. Then we'll talk about the benefits for your students. We'll talk about how to set up a private class. And finally we'll talk about how to sell your private classes. Take a look at your schedule. You might have a 7 a.m. class, a lunchtime class, and then in the evening you'll teach a kids class, a beginner's class and an advanced class. And maybe a yoga teacher will drop by a few times a week. Even with a relatively busy schedule like that, your mats are empty more than that they are being used. What if I told you that you could use that downtime to create extra income, get new people in the door, help your students improve faster, and build a better connection with them? That's where private classes come in. Private classes are a great way to gain some additional income, and for some instructors, myself included, they can be your main source of income. If you don't feel like teaching private classes yourself, you could always have your students or competitors teach private classes for a small fee of their class rates in return. Now let's look at the benefits for the students. Why should they pay the premium? When I first started teaching private classes, for me it was more of a way to finance my jiu-jitsu lifestyle. I didn't really see the benefits yet. I knew that a lot of people liked one-on-one instructions, but I wasn't a true believer. That changed quickly after I started teaching the private classes myself. Some of the main benefits I saw were the level of instruction. For a teacher, it's always hard to find the perfect level of instruction. You have to find a level that's both challenging, but not too challenging for the majority of the group. With private classes, you don't have to worry about the group. You can focus just on that one individual student, which means you can give the perfect level of complexity for your class. 2 is customized techniques. Jiu-jitsu is for everyone, but everyone has a different game. With private classes, you can teach the techniques that will fit perfectly for the person that you're teaching it to. So you don't need to show them moves that probably won't work for their body type or moves that they are not interested in. You can show them exactly the techniques they need at that time. Addressing specific issues. I want to help as many of my students as possible, but usually when I'm done teaching the class, the next group is already waiting to storm the mats. With private classes, you can finally take the time to solve all your students' problems instead of just rushing through a few techniques and then running off to the next class. Private classes will help you solve the student's specific problems so he can start progressing faster. Private classes can also be a great introduction to Jiu-Jitsu. Just diving into a group class can be quite intimidating for some people. A lot of people try to prove themselves against a new person. With the private classes, you take away all that pressure and you just give them a nice introduction to Jiu-Jitsu so they have like a better way to get into it. They already know the basics when they start the group classes, so it's a great way to start Jiu-Jitsu as well. Finally, private classes are very accommodating to different schedules. Entrepreneurs, healthcare professionals, people in security. There's a lot of people that don't work the standard 9 to 5. Private classes can be a perfect outcome for those people. So how do you actually go about teaching a private class? Usually my private class will look something like this. I'll start with a 10-minute warm-up. For beginners, I will work a little bit on the jiu-jitsu basics, like hip escapes, shrimps, front rolls. If you want to learn more about our warm-ups, check out the video on warm-ups here. For more advanced students, I prefer repeating the techniques from the last class or doing some drills that are relevant to the position that we're working on in that class. Then we'll do about 30 minutes of techniques. I like to do between 3 to 5 techniques depending on the complexity of the technique and the level of the student. After the technique, we'll go to filming the techniques. So usually this takes about 5 minutes. Most students would like to have their positions filmed so they can watch it back when they're home. After filming, we'll do about 15 minutes of specific sparring from the position of that day so they can really apply the moves and see how it works against resistance. I will build up my resistance. So in the beginning, I will just let them drill basically, and then every time they hit the moves, I will increase the intensity of the roll and give them some more complex problems to solve. This is where people really learn. Pretty simple so far, right? Well, here are some things that can bring your private class to the next level. First, you should limit the number of techniques. You don't want to impress your student with how many moves you know. You want to help them get better. So if you just show them like 9 ways to open the guard and he doesn't retain any of them, that's not a good class. You want to give them some ideas to work with and just enough techniques that are challenging for them but not overwhelming them. Limit the class time. Private classes shouldn't last more than 1 hour. I will do a longer class on a rare exception, but usually after 1 hour the attention span begins to fade and people are not as sharp anymore. Stay sharp. Not only your students' attention span will fade after a while, so will yours. Private classes are pretty intense. You have to be paying attention the whole time. After a few hours of private classes, I'm usually very tired. I don't teach more than 3 or 4 private classes on a day. 3 is usually my maximum. I'm starting to make mistakes and I'm not as sharp anymore. Recently, I found a good solution for this though. I have a few young and hungry competitors training under me, and they are starting to help me out with the private classes. So instead of me being the only person in the room with the student, I have one of my other students with me. So I will show the techniques on them. That way the private class student can see how the move is applied instead of just feel it. And then he will apply the move on my other student, so I can see what he's doing and I have a better view of what's happening. And afterwards he also spars with my student instead of with me, so I can see how he applies the move. For me, that saves a lot of my energy. I don't have to spar myself. For my private class student, he will be able to see me do the move, so it's easier for him to understand. And for my competitor, it's a nice way to learn some extra techniques and even make a little bit of money with doing what he loves. So it's a win-win-win for everyone. Now let's get into selling private classes. The first thing you should do is let the world know that you're teaching private classes. Announce it on your website, put it on your social media, maybe put it in your Instagram bio, in your Facebook description. Let people know that you're available for private classes, otherwise they will never book one with you. Step 2 is sharing it with your prospective clients. Put it in a newsletter, announce it after class, and share on social media that you're now available for private classes. Step 3 is sharing the benefits. So we talked about the benefits for students before, how they will improve faster, how they can use their flexible schedules, all the kind of things you can share on your social media. So every benefit you could do a single post, and you can also share the testimonials of your students, some video footage of your privates if your students grant permission, of course. When people do ask about privates, make sure you have all the information at the ready. I have a PDF with all the information about my private classes. I could just send it to my prospective clients, and they will have all the information they need to set up a private class with me. So, just to recap. Private classes are the perfect way to make most out of your gym. You will get people in the door that otherwise wouldn't start training jiu-jitsu. You will help your students improve faster, and it's a great way to create some additional income. Are you already teaching private classes? What's your approach? Let us know in the comments.